All right, we are live. Happy. Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to head into Facebook too so I can check out um, our chat link. So just give me one sec. So I have the chat up and then we'll start chatting. Okay, here we are. So good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Yes, it's Monday. Hope everyone had a really great weekend. Today's the day. Today we kick off Womensgiving. So last year around this time, I hosted an in-person event, a Womensgiving, Thanksgiving, you see my pun. And so this year I decided to host a Womensgiving virtually with women across the sphere. So women that aren't just in Cleveland. So there are 14 women come in live and I'm showcasing over the next 6 weeks before Thanksgiving. And shout out to everyone in Canada today because Thanksgiving is actually today in Canada. So today I have Annie Sanchez. Annie and I are we haven't known each other for very long. However, it feels like I've known her longer than I actually have. We met in one of those fancy groups that we belong in, club, group, mastermind, whatever you want to call it. And I've been following her for the last year, keeping a close eye. You know how I am. Most of you know, if you know me, you know I observe and follow. So and Annie's one of those people that I've been following. And yeah, so we connected recently again, and I knew that I wanted to ask Annie to participate in this 6-week series. And to have her share her story and to really inspire us. So that's the theme for all of the next 6 weeks is inspiration through inspirational stories. So I would love to introduce you to Annie, who's going to interview style talk with us this morning. And thank you so much for saying yes and being on live this morning. Hi.
Hi, good morning. Oh, thank you for asking.
Yeah,
D-
yeah,
yeah.
of course. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in and get to know you. So
Okay.
let's go ahead and start with Annie. Tell me about you and tell me about your story and tell me about what led you to doing what you're doing now.
Mm, oh my gosh. Well, so I am a little about me. I use she and her pronouns. I am from Tiwa lands in New Mexico. My lineage on both sides go back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. My 90 almost 97-year-old grandma who lives down the street from me, she says I am New Mexican. It's its own culture. It's very much its own place. We and I am of people who, the colonizers and the colonized. It's very complicated. And yeah, it's a very unique thing to be from New Mexico. Throughout my life, I've lived a lot of places. So I was born in Albuquerque and I grew up in Santa Fe. And I did a year of high school in the Bay Area. I used to get into a lot of trouble as a young person, a lot. My poor mom, oh my gosh. And so she had the fabulous idea, but made it seem like mine, to go live in the Bay Area where my two big sisters were living to get me out of Santa Fe. And so I went and did a year of high school there and kind of like calibrated, got on track, ended up graduating high school early, and had previously been encouraged to drop out by my guidance counselor when I was a freshman. Um, and have, as soon as I graduated, just wanted to be moving around. So I've lived, I lived in the Bay, I lived in New Orleans after high school, I lived in LA for a couple of years, I lived in Hawaii for almost 5 years. I lived in New York for 8 years. I've been back in New Mexico for I've been back in New Mexico for a month, but I've been like back from New York. I moved from New York about 10 years ago. I've backpacked for extended periods of time around South America, Central America, Mexico, Europe, slept on buses, hitchhiked, like all of the things in my 20s. Um, I feel like I really became the person, like the adult I was gonna be while living in New York. I moved there in my mid 20s, was there for into my early 30s, and I've been in New Mexico. I'm here in Albuquerque now, in a house that you might even hear echo. It's not all the way furnished yet. We've just moved in a little over a month ago. Um, and I've had, in the same way that I've like meandered about and lived in different places, I've also done a lot of different things. So what led me to the work that I do now, like I had the last stop before being Annie Sanchez, CEO of Mariposa Strategies, creator of Clarity Pages, founder of the Women of Color Culture Club, host of my podcast, the Courage, Culture, and Clarity podcast, which is like 125,000 downloads as of this week. It's brand new, baby little podcast. I was previously in the nonprofit sector. I have a big background in nonprofit, but I also worked in the restaurant industry for 16 years. Everything from like suit and tie, fine dining, tableside duck carvings for celebrities, to hole in the wall, like slinging food, like really, really hole in the wall, and everything in between. And so I'd been in the nonprofit sector and for a number of years. One of my big sisters is in that world, and I purposefully did not go to college and thought, well, this seems like a path I can take. So while I was in New York, I had taken some classes thinking I would go to college, or some college classes thinking I was going to get a degree. And it was like immediately, I'm like, nope, 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 this is not for me, this is not for me. And so I started taking classes, like certificate classes, just to understand more about fundraising and philanthropy. So I'd gone to NYU for, I don't know, like 2 years to get a certificate in fundraising from their really prestigious school of fundraising, the Hyman Center of Fundraising and Philanthropy, and was just like, because I'm a very activated person, like I do it, like let's go backpack, let's go do this, let's go do that. I was all in on fundraising, all in on the nonprofit sector. So I was immersed for probably, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 years, not that long, late 20s into my mid 30s. And to make a long story short, I quit that job, that last job, in my last day was July 13th, 2018. It was the highest salary I'd ever had, making a killing at $63,000 a year. So like $20,000 less than my predecessor. And have been told over and over that people were really sad to see me go because we were innovating things in a way that they hadn't before, a really stuffy kind of sector. But I had to get out. It was not the place for me. I'm not a forever stable career kind of person. I like change. I like movement. And the conditions that I was working under, I was the first person of color, first woman of color specifically, in a leadership role in the organization that I worked for at the time. And that it was really hard. It was really, really, really hard to be in that place. It wasn't a matter of feeling like I wasn't fully respected. I was questioned at every turn. It was even though the people I was serving were receiving what we were doing, me and my team, took my little tiny baby team. We were 2 people when I started. We were expanded. We were a team of 9. We were doing statewide work. Now I was building national partnerships. But at my like little organizational level, just a lot of really gross disrespect and like shit talking and like rumor spreading. So I was like, I don't have to be here. Like, what am I even doing here? And so I quit. I quit. I told everybody that I was going to open a wine bar, and that was the plan in 2018. I left to open a wine bar. I have this wine background, this restaurant background. My great grandparents grew wine not far from here, in the early 20th century, late 19th century. Like I've always said, wine is a part of my lineage, and I was ready to do it. And so I threw myself all in on that. Started side hustling, just trying to make ends meet while I was getting the wine bar off the ground. The laws here don't allow for wine bars, so then I was like, well, I'll just change the law. So then I went down this whole like path for months, building a coalition, talking to legislators. I wanted to get a wine bar bill passed. But in the meantime, like I needed money. So it was like, well, shit, what am I gonna do? If my wine bar does not happen like in the next 10 months, within the next year, what am I gonna, like, I gotta eat and I'm not gonna go get a job again. Oh my God, what am I doing? And so I used every credit card point I had. It would have been October of 2018. Every credit card point I had on my Chase credit card, and like $200 additional to book a couple of nights at a really beautiful kind of remote place here in New Mexico to just go catch my breath and figure out what the fuck I was gonna do. I had my gigantic wall-sized business model canvas, big easel pads, post-it notes, every colored pen and marker. I'm like, and all my books, all of the sacred objects that I needed for guidance. I'm like, let me go strategize my life. Like, what am I doing? What if I can't do this, then what? And I didn't know it at the time exactly what it was going to be. And it was so not expected, but ultimately I ended up incorporating my business, Soulful Services, LLC, and doing business as Mariposa Strategies November 1st, so almost just around the corner, 4 years ago. And if I have those Post-its somewhere around here, I have fulfilled all of the things that came out of that strategy session. And so it was really a matter of, what led me here was a matter of need. Like, I got bills to pay, roof over to keep over my head, but also a need for something that was mine. Something that was mine and that could live and grow and breathe and morph with me, and all of my wild ideas and need for freedom. I started it as I kept calling it in the beginning, location independence. It's important to me that I have location independence. Before the pandemic, before that group that we're a part of existed, I didn't know really anything about running a business. But I'm like, I don't want to be attached to a place or a space. So everything was virtual from the get-go.
So when you say the Post-it notes, everything was fulfilled, what were those things?
Those were, I was asking myself questions about how I wanted to feel. So that really started to drive the initial part of that 2-night strategy session. How do I want to feel? And then, like, what do I want my days to look like? So it was like these 2 columns. And so the feeling was like, I don't want, at the time I was starting to build a relationship with anxiety. Well, I'd been building it for since 2015. My mom died in 2014. And then I had found myself in that nonprofit job, and it was like, there wasn't enough time to really grieve. So I was just so much anxiety. And so one of the big things for me was like, I don't want panic attacks. Like, I want to never have a panic attack again. I don't want to feel anxiety in the way that is so debilitating. Like, I can't even breathe. I want to feel spacious. Like, I want to have just open days that I can plug things in when I want to. I can pull things out when I don't want to. I want it to feel spacious. I want it to feel just light. Like, it's like this lightness. And the way that I wanted my days to look, I'm like, I want to be in conversation about things that are deeper than what's up here. Like, I want to talk to people about what's really going on. I want to be at lunch during the day with amazing women and people of color and non-binary people. Like, I have a Post-it that says that, just who are these people? I don't know who they are. What are we going to be talking about? I don't even know. But I've been told throughout my life by the people that I grew up next to that I have, it's often perceived that I have like this morbid attachment to like wanting to talk about like the deep dark stuff, or like if I'm gonna die tomorrow, would I be happy with how I spent today? I'm like, it's for me it like it unlocks brightness. Like I'm not running away from the dark. I want to talk about the dark because without dark we don't have light. And so it's like I just want to be in like deep rich conversations. I want to be supporting women of color. At the time, overwhelm reduction was major. So I was like, I've gotten here from where I had been in the previous couple of years. I want to help women who were like me 2-3 years ago. So that was the path, solidly focused for a couple of years. And I'm like, and I wanted to hit 6 figures. That was like monumental to me. And it was, and it is. My first year I made $11,000. It was like 2 months of work, but I made like $11,000 in 2018, October, like November, December. Then 2019 I made like $45,000, which I was like, that's pretty, like for not even knowing what I'm doing. And then 2020, I hit 6 figures. Like my second full year, 2021, 6 figures again. This year I'm already way past like multiple 6 figures this year. And so I'm like, okay, like I made the money, I'm having the conversations, I am going to lunch during the day, my days are really spacious, like it's like check, 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 check. Yeah, like that was so giant for me to think of a life like that, and it happened pretty fucking quickly.
Mm-hmm. How did the Women of Color Culture Club come about?
The Women of Color Culture Club. Oh, my phone just fell. So when I started my business, again, going just all in, immersing myself, making it my business to be an expert on the things that I was doing, I was just, I had this insatiable hunger for being in spaces with other women of color entrepreneurs. And New Mexico is predominant. It's like they call it a minority majority state. Like there's a lot of folks of color here. The old like Hispanic people. There's a lot more Black and brown, and there's indigenous folks. Of course, these are native lands. We have like 19 pueblos within the state of New Mexico. The Navajo Nation spans over. Like there's a lot of Black and brown and indigenous folks in New Mexico these days, a lot of Asian folks, a lot of Polynesian folks. And I had this like, okay, there's all these people, there's also a lot of white folks. I just had a yearning to be in space with women of color who were building businesses too, but I didn't have language for it. And it wasn't like it is right now. It's crazy that it was only 4 years ago. It feels like, God, 10 years ago. But really 4 years ago, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now, that like every community, every corner of the internet, there is some mastermind or group And so I didn't even have social media back then. So I created a meetup.com or whatever that website is, for women of color entrepreneur mastermind is what I called it. And I just wanted other women of color who are in business to come so I could just share ideas. And that was not successful. A lot of white women showed up to the Women of Color Entrepreneurial Mastermind. There were like 8 of us total, and I think half of them were white women. And there's like, my husband is a white dude. He's so white. Like some of my best girlfriends, chosen fam, are white women. I'm not anti-white people, but there is something very sacred about being in space with folks of color. And so it wasn't the right dynamic. And so I ended up finding my people. And like a year later, I'm like, I wonder if other women of color in town are wanting something like that. But that's not necessarily business focused, because I was all about overwhelm reduction and like goal setting, like really holistic goal setting. I was doing all these goal setting workshops. People were coming, they were selling out. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this sort of like goal setting, goal oriented women of color cohort. So I did that in the fall around this time of 2019. It was 3 months long, 2 sessions a month, one virtual, one in person. God, at a coffee shop around the corner from where I'm living right now. Wild. I charged $250 and it was amazing. It was so amazing. There were 5 women in it, and I just saw 4 of them in person for the first time in like 3 years, literally. A couple weeks ago when I moved home, I like pulled Culture Club, whoever lives in Albuquerque. People are all over the country, but there's, of course, because I have roots here, there are folks here. So I was like, if anybody wants to meet me on a patio for some snacks, like I'd love to get together. I have never done that since then. So I just saw some of them, and they were like, that time literally changed my life. Like all of the things, all the goals that they set, those that were at that hangout a couple weeks ago, were like, they've all come true. Like they've all come to fruition. It was like, this was really cool. This was fun. This felt really good. I was completely following my intuition, not modeling it after anything I was seeing, because there was nothing like that I could find. And I'm like, I want to do this again at some point, and I'm not sure how, what, but like, I'll do it again in some version of it. It ended in October of 19. I started immediately planning an all women of color retreat, an in-person retreat, one day retreat in January of 2020. So like cohort ended, retreat. I was like, oh, more of this, like all of this. I was starting to like really get my sea legs under me. My partner and I, we were looking to buy a house because we needed more space. We couldn't find a house. And I was like, you know what? I'll just rent an office. That'll buy us some time. So I started renting an office in February of 2020. I signed a lease for 6 months, moved in March 1st, 2020. I was like, oh, this is so exciting. Like little Annie always wanted to like live in a big office, like have a big office building, it was like fulfilling some of my childhood like desires. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like figure out that women of color thing again, this cohort experience. And then the world shut down 11 days later. And I had this office, which I had prepaid 6 months in advance. I'm like, okay. It was very cheap. It was like, okay, I can't run from this office. Like, I'm just here. This is good. I don't have to, okay. What am I going to do with it? At least I now have an extension of home to come to that's safe. Nobody was in the building but me and like one other person. And I was like, you know what? I wonder, I was supposed to do a goal setting workshop in person in March. And I asked those who had registered, do you want to do it virtually? Most of my work, most of my group experiences, workshops and such attract women of color. And so it was a small group of women of color. I was like, do you want to do it virtually? And so I held it virtually in March. And I said, as I was preparing for them, I'm like, I wonder if they would want to I'm going to ask them, like kind of market research. Let me just ask them if this cohort thing would be of interest, but not 3 months, not a big old drawn out thing. Maybe we could just do like a month, because all I could think about was like 1 week at a time with the pandemic just starting. That really, really potent early stage of the pandemic was so like, what's happening to the world, what's happening to our lives. And so I asked them, and they were like, I would be a part of that. And so April of 2020, I was like, fuck it, I'm doing it. So I sent an email to my list, my Women of Color segment, and held the second Women of Color cohort, but it wasn't goal oriented. There was a goal setting session, but it was like 5 weeks, and it blew my mind. It takes my breath away now to remember how like the energy of it, part of it being influenced by what was happening in the world, part being influenced by the fact that most people were not all virtual. I had been all virtual for 1.5 years at that point, with the exception of a couple of select in-person experiences. But it was like this screen filled with all these faces, our earbuds in, voices coming so intimately into our ear. It was fucking magical, Dora. And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm doing this. There was nothing else to do. Everything was supposed to speak at conferences and stuff that year. Everything was getting canceled. I was like, I'm just going to do another cohort. So I did it again in May. And I had even more people, and people that I didn't know from across the country were registering. Like cohort 2 told people, it's just like starting to spread. It was like, fuck it, I'm doing it again in June. So I did it again in June. Then I did it again in September. And it was in September of 2020 that I changed the name to Women of Color Culture Club, because Women of Color cohort, I was like, what? It's a cohort of women of color, but that is not like the name of a thing. And it was, so the Women of Color Culture Club. So I did cohort 5 in September, then I did cohort 7 in February, cohort 8 in May of 2021, did another one, cohort 9, like September of last year, and now I'm enrolling in cohort 11. And it's like, wow, it's interesting to recap it to you. It's like surreal, honestly.
So that is magical. The whole thing is magical. Say how magical it is too. So these wild ideas that you get that turn into something so tangible. What I love about you, Annie, is that they turn into something so tangible because you're inspired through yourself. You said, and I put it in the chat, I didn't model anything that I saw. You were completely inspired through yourself, and you continue to do that. And that is what is so magical about you, is there's not this like outside, you're not seeing something and then duplicating. The whole thing is built through you. And that's just, those are those wild ideas that you have. It's insurmountable now and invaluable to others. So how did you end up in Maine in 2022?
That was where we had our first conversation. I remember us talking. I was like, I'm sitting here on the coast of Maine, spring of this year, 2022. So pandemic emerged. My husband and I, we have taken it extraordinarily seriously, the pandemic. And really only like now in October of 2022 are we starting to interact with the world at all. Like maybe a little extreme, but we've been so in our bubble that like it's like weird to be around people. And so last year, 2021, we didn't buy that house. I was renting the office 2020. It still kept coming up, like this house, we were living in a little tiny rental, cute little house that I had been in for 6 years. I was like, just this house is too small for us. It started to feel like it was closing in, low ceilings. It was dark in there. And so we were like, you know what, let's buy a house. I kept bringing it up. And it was like, the answer is we don't want to buy a house, but we want to move out of this house. So why is the result that we're still in this house? Every time we talk about it, we still end up in this house. So let's just get the fuck out of this house. And so we decided, he did RV life for a year before I met him. And I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just fucking do it. And so I had a little tiny SUV. I was like, I'll research the vehicles that are like SUVs that are big enough to tow. And you research the travel trailers, and then we're going to buy one, and we're going to renovate it, and we're going to hit the road in like 3 months. So we had that thought like in April of 2021, June 14th of 2021, we went and bought the RV from some guy in town. Threw myself all into renovating it. Basically, I renovated it. Matt did some things, but I did like 90%. He will attest to that. It's so cute inside. Renovated that RV while running the business, while moving out of our house, while selling all our shit, while trying to like visit with my dad and my grandma before we were going to leave. And it was like, we hit the road August of 2021, sold almost everything, and just hit the road. And we RV'd it for about 5 months. But like, I think it was, I'm not exaggerating, like day 5, it was like, oh my God, what are we doing? This can't be, what are we we doing? He's a musician. I'm running the business. Like I had my giant, I was like, I have to bring my monitor with me. And we had like a tiny travel trailer, no slide outs, 21 feet total, me, him, the cat. Like, oh my God. It was really, he's extremely introverted, needs a lot of alone time. Oh, he was like, why did, huh?
Was this your first experience camping?
Yes.
Like in an
For
RV?
me.
Yeah.
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 And so it was like, okay, RV life is not going to work. What are we going to do? Well, let's like get through this. Got through the fall, ditched the RV here back, circled back to New Mexico in early winter, left the RV here, and it was like, where do we want to go? Well, we really loved the Pacific Northwest where we had RV'd, and we were really intrigued by like Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, somewhere up there, because neither of us had ever been. And so I was like, let me just pour myself in and research. And I was like, we'll just go wherever we can find a home that meets our needs. And because we'd been in a tiny, tiny, tiny RV, we wanted like I wanted to feel like a rich bitch. It was a very calculated choice. And we found that. And that is so we were living on the coast of Maine for 6 months, December through May. So in the winter and spring, but right on the coast. Talk about magical. Oh my God. Like nobody's there because nobody goes there in the winter, which is the best kept secret for anybody's watching. Go to Maine in the winter. Actually, it's like divine. The most incredible, incredible landscape in the winter. Such a starkness, and the bald eagles and the deer and the foxes just right out. And the water, we were literally like the water was right there. And the point of being in Maine was to be somewhere we had never been, still in the spirit of adventure. And Matt was working on an album that he needed to record. He had already written it. He needed to record it. And I needed to kind of strategize what the fuck I was doing with my business. Like, what is the next level? This had been about 3 years into business. I usually change things up every 3 years in my life. And I was feeling like a yearning for something different. And so we were there, and really what happened there, he did record the album. I didn't figure out my whole business, but next phase of business, but I did a lot of grieving that hadn't had a chance to come out. I don't think I've ever cried so much in my life, even more than when my mom died. But tears from when my mom died were coming. It was like something was left on that floor. Like, I will never be the same after our time in Maine. We are different people. I'm a different Annie. Like, I stopped drinking alcohol. I am a wine person. Like, it's like, I don't drink alcohol anymore. I wake up with the sunrise. I cry a lot. I grieve a lot still. Like, that's always going to be true. But I think I'm more me than I've ever been as a result of that period in Maine.
I'm so glad I got to spend time with you when you were going through that. Because I like that too. If it's not deep and there's not some suffering in there, we talked about, I think it was you and I who talked about like if we're crying, we're so excited. Woo, there's real, like that's the real. And that warmth, when we are touched by spirit, that warmth that we get filled up with and we allow it to take over. Oh, I love that. So the podcast.
Oh my gosh.
What 145,000 downloads, had it less than a year. You're on 35th episode. You're showing up for this podcast from people from all over. Where, what, huh?
Yeah, so a big part of running business these days, at least our kinds of businesses, is being on social media. And prior to 2018, I didn't even have social media personally. So really, it's only been less than 4 years that I've been on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or any of these places. And because I go all in on the thing that I'm doing, it was like, okay, like just immersed in social, which opened up a door to this whole world of other people doing similar things, and which has just been really accelerated in the last like 2 years. And I found all of the parts of me that are like, let me think it, let me do it, like go boom, like sparky activator Annie, quick start Annie in my Colby assessment, was feeling really, really overwhelmed and like questioning everything because of the power, the influence of others on social. And I have very bad boundaries, so it was really difficult for me to get off of social media. I kept saying at different times, like, I'm gonna get off. So when we were in Maine, I'm like, you know what? I think instead of me pouring my heart and soul into these Instagram posts, I could try to do emails, but it's really for me, I just need to talk. Like Annie is a talker, obviously, and that's just always been true. So I decided I would start a podcast purely as an outlet for my anxiety. I had no intention of using it like really in a strategic way for anything, but I'm like, I need to talk, and my partner like needs me to not talk. So I was like, you go upstairs to your studio and I'll be down here like early morning sunrise morning thoughts. So it was this little messy podcast called Musings from My Desk that I was literally recording on my iPhone, the voice memo app, airdropping it to my laptop, uploading it, just boom, 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 boom. Nothing, no editing, no mic, not even the ear, like nothing. And I think I did probably, I was doing it every week because I was in Maine and I was not even leaving the house because it was perfect. I didn't need to leave the house. And so I was just immersed in it, and it's the most consistent thing I have ever done in my life. On my Clifton Strengths, consistency is like second to last. And so it was like episode 2 and 3 or 3 and 4 are literally like anxiety is the name of one of them, and the other one is like anxiety part 2. Like it was just a way to channel my shit, and people were listening. And I remember like maybe like a month, maybe 2 months in, I had like 8 episodes, maybe 10 episodes. I saw that like there was like around 11,000 downloads, and it was like, oh my God, like who are these people? I know they don't equate to 11,000 people, but there have been 11,000 intents to listen to these episodes. Who are these people? I wasn't even hooked up with Chartable, or I'm still barely doing any of the things officially. But I just kept recording. Because it was a thing to do for me. It was so helpful to have an anchor. And then I started doing, like, in addition to my normal episodes, my numbered episodes, I did like 7 or 8 guidance episodes. So they don't have a number, but they're titled guidance. They're earlier on. Because I was getting requests from people on my email list and through my social media, like, God, I would love to hear how to do this thing, like what to do when I'm feeling anxious. Like you're sharing your anxiety. I relate. I get it. I totally, and like, what do I do when I'm anxious? What do I do when something feels X, Y, and Z? So I started doing some guidance episodes, sprinkling those in. And it was just like, so now there's technically like 43 or 44 episodes total. I took a break when we left Maine. Summer was a little wonky. Still on the road, still living. We were in Atlanta for the summer. And it was just harder. I wasn't as inspired. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a break. It'll come back when it wants to come back. And so I in August, I decided I'm bringing it back. I think I can do like 10 more episodes before the year is over. I can't do it every week. And I have ideas for how to, like, not like in a really polished way, but I wanted to polish it up a little. So I started working with a podcast producer, strategist person, woman of color. She's also a full-time traveler right now, currently like nomad life. And I like her approach. And so I was like, can you just like help get the ideas out of my head for 10 episodes? Because usually I just record on the fly. And she was like, yeah, I can. So we spent 3 hours together. She helped me think it through. Her team has produced. So I was like, she helped me think through my episodes. I recorded them. I've never batch recorded. That was really painful at first, and then I finally got on a roll and did it over like 2 a.m. over 2 nights. And her team put the music in that I chose, and right now it's in season 2, and I changed the name to Courage, Culture, and Clarity. Clarity. I trademarked the word clarity back in 2018. It's a word that is used a lot, and it has like a deep, deep, deep personal like meaning for me. And so it was like courage, culture, and clarity. And like motherfuckers are listening to these random shows that I have been recording, and I'm like, who are you? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Like, I want to know these people who are listening so badly, because it's interesting reflecting back, like the podcast and the Women of Color Culture Club in a lot of ways were born out of no intention for them to be anything. Like, I just needed a thing for myself. Like, let me create the thing that will help me get through this moment in my life, or the thing that I wish I had like last year. And that's sort of like, I just keep creating based on just a few steps behind me, what I've just gotten through. And people are listening. So I don't know what to do with it, but it feels like a big future of my, whatever my business wants to evolve into, for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's been inspiring me. I love to talk too, and my husband's like, stop talking. And I just love to talk. That's why I do these morning huddles. It's more for me, like, because in the morning I have all these thoughts and I have to get them out. Yeah. So it's been, thank you. And so, lastly, um, how 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 do we work with you now and in 2023? How do we work with Annie?
Good question. So these days, the way that I work with people, it's a couple. So there's this quick start, fiery, sparky activator Annie, and then there's this double water, like guided by the moon, like deeply, deeply sensitive, squishy Annie. So in order to satisfy both of those parts of me, this side of me, sparky activator Annie, I do very select B2B strategy with a team of all women of color magic makers, consultants, heart-centered people like me. There's a group of 4 of us. We call ourselves the Stardust Collective, and we take on maybe like 2 to 3 contracts a year. Like aligned contracts, a lot. Like, we don't respond to proposals, but we, like, if a business or a nonprofit or a company is like, they're struggling with team dynamics or like strategic visioning, strategic planning, because I'm also very process oriented, and so are a couple of the folks in our collective. So we'll do like really beautiful, juicy, heart-centered but very tangible B2B strategy. So that's one way, and then this way, like, the 2/3 of my heart and mind and body and energy go to private guidance. I do private guidance work 1-to-1. I take, like, in 2023, I'll be taking no more than 6 clients for the whole year individually. Some people I work with for 6 months, some people I work with for a full year. And then the Women of Color Culture Club. I have a cohort coming up starting in January. That'll be the 11th cohort. And so right now I have like early enrollment right now. And I foresee 2023 being this cohort in January, 4 to 6 clients throughout the year. I already have 3, so I really only have space for 2 to 3 more. And more writing, more podcasting, more speaking, not necessarily on a stage, but maybe spaces like this. I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to predetermine it too much, because then it loses its excitement for me. Yeah. 1-to-1 culture club, if you identify as a woman of color, non-binary person of color, or if you have an org that is like, I need a strategist. Like, I'm strategic as fuck. I'm very heart-centered, but I'm like very strategic, and so are my people. So mariposastrategies.com, my website, has the stuff, has all the stuff.
Yeah, I posted a little bit of that. I'll post more after our little interview. So, how is it being home?
complicated to say the least. Because I feel like I'm still in traveler, adventure, exploration, coming to the underbelly of my existence self. Um, my Matt said, he's like, it's almost like when you break up with somebody and you see them too soon, like you agree to go get coffee too soon. It has felt like that. And just yesterday, finally was like, oh, okay. Like I do choose here for now. The skies are so good. They're so beautiful. They're so beautiful. There's so much sky here. You can see for hundreds of miles in all directions. There's mountains. You see the weather like 50 miles away. You can see where it's raining. You can see the sun setting. It's stunning, the landscape here. Um, and I like that. I need sky. I need space for all of my watery thoughts to get life breathed into them. And I love that my grandma's down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's 97.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I should hook her up with my 98-year-old grandfather. He lives in Florida. He lives in Cape Coral, and everything around him is just destroyed except this assisted living facility that he's in. They built this sucker so well and it wasn't touched at all. So he doesn't even really, they haven't been out. He doesn't even realize that like anything really happened. Yesterday when my sister talked to him, he was playing Wii bowling the ladies. Like he doesn't know. I mean, he's the hierarchy of our family. He is the reason I wanted to go to Cornell. Like he is so powerful in my decision making, my life, my overall fate. So I understand the importance of having that 97-year-old grandma down the street completely. Oh, well, this was just wonderful. I really appreciate you hopping on as the first in this series, and I'll share all your stuff so people can get in touch with you. For ticket holders to the series, you will get the recording of Annie, and you'll also get a bonus, which is her time. She's been willing to open up some time and schedule some one-on-one consults. So thank you so much for that as well. And yeah, everyone have a beautiful, blessed day. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you.
Thank you. I can just talk to you all day.
Yeah, it was wonderful to sit back and listen. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me. It means a lot.
You're totally inspiring me to think about a podcast. I was like, oh, everybody under the sun has a podcast. But then when you're like, it's not about the other people, it's about you. And I'm like, oh my God, this is such a great place for me to just babble.
Mm-hmm. You never know who's gonna just do it. Don't overthink it. Don't
Right.
be all strategy-y. Just do it.
How do you find out about the people that are downloading it? How do you find out?
Oh my gosh. Well, so I finally hooked my stuff up with there's this program, this website called Chartable. That's the one that like measures where they fall on the charts. I did it late, so it's not a fully accurate reflection of my data, but I can see at least like certain demographics. And I just have to engage them and be like, reach out to me, tell me who you are, send me a note. But I also, that's like when we've talked about like how launching and that whole thing is so exhausting. There's a part of me, like it starts to wear on my self-esteem when I'm launching and it's not going the way that I want, which makes me not want to launch shit. And when I'm asking people to interact with me and they don't, it makes me feel like shit. So I'm like, I'd rather not ask, but then I don't know. But I see that they're like more than 1,000 downloads every single day. It's like 25, 30,000 a month. It's fucking wild.
That is so wild. Like it takes people years to do that. Yeah.
Most get like maybe a couple hundred a month. Like the majority of the 2 billion or million or however many there are, like it's it's not nothing,
Mm-mm.
but I'm like scared. I'm like, what? So that's part of my end of 2022 is like, okay, what is it that I've learned about my like role in the world, my public roles, because there is something very connected here to the ways that I see myself and feel, but also the way people perceive me, the way that I think people. It's like, what am I learning here? And knowing I don't want to launch shit, and so it's like, okay, how can I be a little more strategic with this podcast or some modality connected to it that allows me to share my voice? So that's a big focus for me over the coming months.
It's such a gift, Danny. And one of the things that I've been like just saying a lot lately is our like basic talents, what we think is basic is extraordinary. Our
Mm-hmm.
gifts are extraordinary.
Oh, look at that little dog, fuzzy little.
Yeah, she's the one who kept me up all night. Um,
It's true. The thing that comes the easiest is, in fact, the thing to lean into. That seems like, how can this possibly be a thing? How can would somebody pay me for? Like
right.
that's the stuff, which
I
is so
know.
counterintuitive. Like we are told it has to be hard. We got to work hard, and it's like, what if
I
you don't though?
I'm starting very toddlerish to tap into that because I just celebrated a year of being full time doing this, and
That's
it's
right.
so interesting. I'm like, oh, huh. Like I still like I have it's very toddler. Like people really need me. People, huh? Like it's tough to
Hmm.
yeah. So it came to me like, okay, Dora, like the stuff that's just so basic is really extraordinary to others. Lean into it. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to like feel bad for people needing these things that you think are just like, well, doesn't everybody know this?
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, this is great. I have to run because I have an 11 o'clock and it's super early morning for you. Thank you for dressing up.
Oh, this is like my fancy pajama easy. Thank
Start.
you for having me. Thank you for
Oh, I
everyone
know what I was
listening.
gonna ask before we hung up. I made some notes here. Do you know your human design? Are you a manifest generator?
I don't know.
I'm curious. I wonder if we're the same. That's all. So far, we are in all the other things. So, just curious if you're a manifest generator. I'm not into that. I have a client that's into it, and that so she helped me figure out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm devoted to like traditional Hellenistic astrology. So but I'm curious about human design, but I don't know enough about it,
Yeah.
and I'm so immersed in my studies
Hmm.
in other ways. So
Yeah.
I'll find out and tell you.
Thank you again. All right. Have a good
Bye.
rest of your day. Bye.